Now that it's cool enough for me to record in here and not literally boil to death, let's leave the bait at the door, shall we? No. France didn't save turn-based combat mainly because it didn't need saving. But there was this little game that released, you probably haven't heard of it, super niche, no one's played it, it's not like it's broken any records or anything. Eh? I had you for a second there. I'm sure it is. It's not like it was in the title or anything. Anyway, there will be no major spoilers for Expedition 33 in this game. It will be mostly combat related, so do enjoy. From where I'm sitting, Expedition 33 has changed some things when it comes to discussing the state of turn-based combat in games, specifically that classic JRPG style. You know the one. You've got options to physically attack, use a range of magic attacks and items and various things, party and stat building, culminating in a very complex sense of deep strategy. So let's have that discussion, shall we? This is going to take a smidgen of context, but I do believe the whole conversation doesn't really work without it, so please bear with me. Even with an impressively lazy Google search, you can track it all the way back to the 1980s, which is the origin point of franchises like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. It then grows quite exponentially through the 90s, especially with the addition of 151 Pocket Monsters, and sees a particular affection in a certain Southeast Asian country, and I bet you can't guess which one. The 2000s, however, did not fare the genre quite so well. See, with the arrival of the 7th gen consoles, there was a pretty significant leap in what the technology was capable of. Just to sort of contextualize this, by the end of the generation we were getting games like The Last of Us, and GTA 5 did, by most definitions, run on those consoles. So as most developers wanted to sort of start taking use of this technology, the static nature of the JRPG became less appealing, shall we say. And the poster child for this particular phenomenon is Final Fantasy. From the franchise debut in 1987, Final Fantasy knew what it was, the preeminent turn-based JRPG, and while it would use this formula to tell a number of different stories in a number of different worlds, much would remain, including the summonable gods that would find themselves travelling from one entry to the next, and mainly your standard menu-based gameplay. And this would remain the case until 2006 with the PS2 release of Final Fantasy XII, injecting some real-time strategy into the mix with a timer that determined the pace of automatic attacks, which you could interrupt to enter the classic selection process and decide the actions of your party. 2009's Final Fantasy XIII would take this approach even further, making the pacing completely automated in favour of an on-the-fly decision-making process, even going so far as to restrict complete control to the lead character in a party. It's around this time that they even managed to sneak in 2 whole MMOs with 11 and 14, as well as their numerous spin-off titles, as part of their grand effort to expand what Final Fantasy could be and who could be found to play it. 14 was my first, by the way, it bangs. But modern Final Fantasy is a different beast entirely. Final Fantasy XV released in 2016 and officially marked the point where they couldn't be bothered to figure out how they could make turn-based combat more exciting, and just made an action RPG instead. It became much closer to a typical third-person action game, just with limited control over your party members. It still retained its JRPG roots in its systems and general gameplay, but combat had completely moved on, which has very much defined the last decade of Final Fantasy. The Final Fantasy VII Remake games have a similar approach, but are more reminiscent of the chicken remembering it was a dinosaur. It features similar action combat, but allows you to swap control over each member in your party. You also have this menu which slows time to a crawl to make decisions about abilities, items, target selection, and the like, keeping the turn-based spirit of the original Final Fantasy VII just barely alive. And then lastly, of course, there is Final Fantasy XVI, which did not give a single shit, and honestly I think that's kind of based. 16 is wholeheartedly a character action game. Honestly, it's a bit of a stretch to call it a JRPG even by modern standards. It's more like a JRPG coating on an action game. It was very clear even from the game's marketing that it was built to take full use of the current technology available, as it was just sort of like a roller coaster ride from one spectacle to the next. Even if it does still have a party, not a party system, but a party and weapons and gear and all that sort of stuff, it's more of an echo of those systems, even compared to how they were used in more modern Final Fantasy titles. You can see how modern technology and interests has rapidly morphed what Final Fantasy even was and what it means to be a Final Fantasy game. It's been quite the controversial topic for a few years now, really reaching quite the climax with Final Fantasy XVI, and I find it a good basis for the changes the genre saw as a whole. Of course, this does not apply to literally the entire genre. Persona, for instance, only lent harder into the iconic Atlas aesthetic that we know now, with Persona 4 releasing in 2008, only a couple years into the generation. You can also see the more general effects of the passing of time in series like Pokemon, which began focusing less and less on a deep combat experience and more on gimmicks and broad appeal, having less to do with the changes in technology and more to do with their stubborn refusal to try anything new given the mountains of cash they were swimming in. A lot of all of this was due to the widening international market, big boy profit opportunities, and of course the stronger focus on Western sensibilities where games tended to be a bit more action oriented. As we push into the 2010s, we start to see fewer classic-style JRPGs, even in the franchises that popularized them, and even the ones that still do use it, see relatively minor innovations. But JRPGs didn't fade away by any stretch of the imagination, the standards just kinda changed. Plenty of them still released that were more inclined towards an Eastern persuasion, and a lot of them saw a haven of sorts in smaller releases and indie titles. Many an indie title will like to style themselves off of the classic JRPGs that inspired them, think the other year's Sea of Stars, and they often reap the same benefits as the genre did back in the 80s and 90s. It's less technically intensive, but still allows you to create plenty of depth and even a sense of spectacle just through art style over pure imagery. It's a really good genre to create an engaging game without having to go absolutely crazy on something like graphics or physics, or something that's a bit more technologically demanding. It also leaves you with more resources to put in somewhere else, like your design work. How do you think Pokemon has lasted like the last decade? Not to make it sound easy by any means, it's just a different set of challenges and one that's often more feasible to overcome when you have a lot of technical restrictions. What didn't really happen was bigger budget or AAA JRPGs, not in that classic style at least. Closest you get is probably stuff like Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy, and they were both published by Square Enix, who were already making so many of these as the creators and publishers of Final Fantasy. And both of these titles were quite recent. Of course you still have your Final Fantasies and your Personas, but they either became something else entirely, or continued to do what they were already good at, selling games simply because it had their name on them over anything else. When games in the genre were trying to do something different, it was typically a step away from tradition, as we discussed with Final Fantasy. Even Atlas's most recent release, Metaphor ReFantasio, saw relatively little innovation in terms of its gameplay at least, to distinguish it from Persona. Catching us up to the modern day, the genre is pretty much set. You know what you're getting from a JRPG, and you can probably make a lot of presumptions at merely a glance, and not a whole lot has come around to try and challenge this. Enter Clair Obscur Expedition 33. All jokes aside, you're clicking on this video because you have heard of Expedition 33, and at this point I'd be more surprised if you hadn't. It had a record-breaking Metacritic score, 3.3 million sales in 33 days, and all the signs are there of a truly generational title. Technically, it isn't a JRPG because it's French, but it ticks all the right boxes. It has plenty of stats and systems to manipulate and craft your way through, and really the distinct whiff of French culture is about the only thing pulling it apart. And not only is it a fantastic JRPG with very diverse characters and a constantly expanding roster of possibilities, it's also one of the most engrossing games I have played in a hot minute. Expedition 33 has a heart-wrenching story told through a select group of fantastically developed and well-voiced characters. It is consistently one of the most artistically beautiful games I have played in a while, and you can well and truly feel the passion from Sandfall Games in every step. It has surprised me at every turn, and I haven't even finished it yet. But what shocked me the most about the game, leading to the creation of this video, is their approach to combat. At a surface level, it has the classic framework, looking very much like a photorealistic Persona on first glance of its combat menus. You've got a button to smack things with your weapon, or just kick them. Another will take you into a sub-menu of abilities for each character, and finally, one for the slim items menu. You enter into a speed-based turn order against enemies with various elemental weaknesses that you can prepare for, and you want to beat them up before they beat you up. Hopefully in the most efficient way possible to maximize experience gain, etc, etc. You know the gist if you've played literally any game like this in your life. But it's in the way they've gone beyond the traditional that Expedition 33 has me so fascinated. See, whether intentionally or not, they have tackled some of the most inherently repelling factors of JRPGs: inactivity and mechanical simplicity. By mechanical I don't mean systems, I mean literally doing shit, the act of pressing the button. JRPGs don't tend to be that intensive. They tend to have a handful of buttons, and often you just won't really be using one of them. And extenuating circumstances aside, you often have all the time in the world to do it. They're a mental game over being skill expressive in that way. The inactivity point is more a call out on our rapidly constricting attention spans. There can be a lot of downtime in these games, from watching animations play out to the entire enemy turn. This is less an actual problem and more a point of comparison. See, as average gamers have gotten better, the level of skill expression that you can typically exhibit in any given game has risen with them, hence how people can play Marvel Rivals without being on cocaine. To the point where these skill expression heavy games have become the norm, competitive multiplayer in any sense, for instance. Trying to account for this is another factor that sent Final Fantasy down the path it eventually took, because people like pressing buttons. Expedition 33 has closed this gap by crossing the classic JRPG formula with the more action-packed, constant sense of action, the skill-expressive, adrenaline-pumping BS that you're more likely to find in a parry-based Souls-like. I just forgot my words there, but I'm going to run with that. I think that works. There is nary a moment in this combat cycle where you are not doing something. Let's start with the addition of free aim. By pressing the left trigger, your turn-based JRPG suddenly becomes a third-person shooter. At the cost of one action point, you can take a shot, with some enemies offering weak points and mechanics that can only be hit during free aim. You can even build into this mechanic with modifiers that allow your shots to afflict status conditions. And beyond that, Expedition 33 also just loves timing. Unless there's one I haven't found yet, which is very possible, every ability in the game comes with a small QuickTime event. I know QTEs sort of became synonymous with Satan a while back, but these are pretty good, I swear. You just have to press the button when in the big green bit, and as someone that's done a lot of skill checks, I was right at home. These aren't especially hard, and they are varied on the grounds of speed and number, so if you're away with the fairies and you crack out some Mael moves, you might get caught with your pants down, so pay attention. I'm pretty sure these just provide extra potency. I don't think there's any sort of like fail state for missing them all, as funny as that would be. But they had a nice little bit of spice, and something this game has in spades: endorphins. And this level of timing very much does extend to defense, because oh yes, we have defensive mechanics. Sandfall's greatest innovation was most assuredly the enemy turn. See, they aren't playing the same game as you. Many enemies, arguably most of them, are goddamn Dark Souls enemies come to ruin your day. I hope you don't get easily tricked by delayed swing timings, because I do. Each enemy has their own attack types and timings, and some of these little sneaky sons of sausages have very similar looking motions for different attack strings. They have extremely different cadences, and honestly, I think they should be arrested for it. Yep, no, I said it. They also do like a lot of damage. So what can you do about this? Well, you can dodge, which is an excellent choice, especially when the creature the size of a house is trying to make you one with the ground. There's a regular dodge window and a perfect dodge window, which is pretty darn tight, but worth going for to generate some AP. This is the I'm unsure about the timing and unwilling to risk my health option, though I often press dodge too early, panic, and start spamming it in the hopes I missed the move just to get hit anyway, so you know, no one's perfect. Then you have the parry. The parry is the most satisfying thing this game has to offer, so it's a real shame I am garbage at it. The parry has a similar, if not identical timing to perfect dodge, but that is the only timing, so do not miss it or you will be goobered. If you can avoid getting hit and parry the final move in a string, you'll perform a counter for a hefty chunk of damage and feel like king of the world till the game puts you firmly back in your place, which may well be on the next attack. These mechanics add a really healthy dose of variety to oh fuck. These mechanics add a really healthy dose of variety to the initial gameplay loop, as you ping pong from making strategic decisions to shitting yourself as you realize the swing wind-up was like half a second longer than you thought it was. The parry was also the main culprit when I mentioned the injection of skill expression into the game. It's decently hard, it feels really good to pull off, and it's quite important to your survival, so you might want to learn how to hit at least a couple of them so that you don't have to block everything with your face. Just a thought. When you meld all of this together, it starts to culminate like a French onion soup. It creates an extremely satisfying experience and one that's really fun to get better at. And when everything just starts to flow, it starts to feel almost like a rhythm game on defense. One where failure amounts to failing the hopes and dreams of entire generations. They put these mechanics to good use in the game's more challenging encounters, where failure to utilize these mechanics will get at least one of your party members one shot, like the godforsaken mimes. These mimes are a recurring optional challenge fight throughout the game. They have extraordinary toughness, and most of their attacks will kill you. The idea is to fill up their break bar, because after that a few strong hits will kill them. This just takes a hot second, so there's some endurance involved. Once you get the hang of it, they aren't actually all that bad, but the first time you see one you will want to toss whatever you're gaming on out the bleeding window. Last but not least, this one is less a crazy innovation and more just a solid gameplay design. Every character has a unique central mechanic. For example, Gustav can use certain moves to generate charges, which links into his overcharge ability, which does high damage and even more for each charge. This thing can single-handedly win you fights, and it will get you through the early game. Or there's Lune, who creates stains as she uses abilities which can then be consumed to proc additional effects on said abilities. Mael has different stances, and the list goes on. It adds to the mental stack and to this idea that you're always busy. There's always something to manage, to keep track of, or to avoid getting pummeled by. Frankly, it's all kinda genius, and what has shocked me the most, unless there's a game out there I simply aren't aware of, and that is very possible, is that no one's really tried this combination before. I think it says a lot that I was really impressed by Sea of Stars' expression with like timing button presses to like do additional effects on moves and stuff. I can't remember exactly what it was doing, but it did something like that. And it says even more the way the internet lost their minds when they added the speed system into Pokemon Legends Arceus. Obviously, JRPGs are a solid genre, and they do what they do really well. There's so many different ways you can take the finer details that it hasn't become stale despite becoming a little set in stone. But this is something I love about gaming. Not only has Expedition 33 come around and crafted a frankly incredible game, but it has proven that this is still a genre you can push and innovate in. More than any other art form, video games have endless potential as far as I'm concerned, and if anything comes out of Expedition 33, I hope it is that spirit. To never stop mixing things up and trying new things, even the most successful of formulas. So no, France didn't save turn-based combat because it didn't need saving, but I do think it has shook things up, and I for one am extremely excited to see what games we get in the future that have been directly inspired by Clair Obscur Expedition 33. That's it for the video. Thank you for watching this weird little look at the evolution of JRPG combat. I do hope you enjoyed it. I felt like I had to make this video approximately 5 minutes after starting Expedition 33, so that's part of why I didn't wait till I finished the game. Another is just there's really good. I don't want to spoil anything, especially because if you've played it, you know there's a pretty damn big spoiler toward the end of Act 1 that would come across in the gameplay. It's an incredible title, and I just can't recommend enough people play it. Even if JRPGs aren't necessarily your thing, it's not as long as traditional JRPGs. I think if you mainline the story, it takes like 20-something hours, which is pretty short for one of these kind of games, so just saying. Reason number 2 is the heatwave. I haven't checked the footage back yet, so I don't know how red I look, but I am sweating right now. It's gotten really hot really quickly, and for those of you that don't know, Britain's houses are built to keep heat in at all fucking costs. So I'm dying. The sun points at that window right there. So my office is cooking me alive, and I cannot sit in here for more than like an hour or two a day. I am dying right now. But hey, we move. Please leave a like. Subscribe for more of this weird game analysis type stuff, and do leave a comment on your feelings on Expedition 33 and its combat specifically, but no spoilers. Please, let's be nice. To me, I haven't finished it yet, remember. The next video should be on the big Darktide update because I felt like it. I don't know. It should be coming out pretty soon. I've recorded all the footage for it. It's just this video is meant to come first, so I'm still finishing this one. Also, for those that are interested, I do run a little blog. I say run because I didn't write anything on it for like 3 months until a couple days ago. It's where I tend to put stuff that doesn't really have any sort of a space on this channel. Mainly, my writing's about film and television. I'm a big film buff, for those of you that don't know, and there's a certain cross-section where I may or may not be really big into superhero media, so I did recently put out 2 reviews on the Daredevil Born Again Season 1 and Ironheart Season 1. So if you've been more interested in stuff like that, please do take a look over on there. And that just kind of got me thinking, I kind of want to get back into game reviews, like just traditional ass game reviews. This channel's more for analysis and video essay type stuff, so I'm thinking if I want to get back into game reviews, I don't know if it should be here, or I do currently have a second channel which is just gathering dust, so I might reboot that. So if you made it this far and you have any feelings on that, let me know, and I'll see you for Darktide.